Thanks, Emily. My name is Matt. I'm a recovered alcoholic addict. Uh, I probably qualify for more 12-step fellowships than two. Uh, it is an honor and a privilege to be here. Emily, thanks for your patience. She's tried to book me a few times, and it finally worked out. Um, it's nice to see some familiar faces. I don't know why you guys keep coming back to hear me. I'm not that interesting. Um, but I appreciate seeing familiar faces anyway. It's a quiet night here. Easy day of watching some football. Got to work out and played some pickleball. Uh, Drew some stuff with my daughter. Cooked a really traditional Puerto Rican dinner meal for the family. Um, and I'm hanging out with you guys. And that might not sound spectacular to a layperson, um, but that's pretty close. It's pretty as close as it gets to a perfect day for me. And my sobriety date that was given to me by something far greater than me is May 19th, 2016. I have a sponsor. He is a sponsor. I sponsor guys. Some of those guys sponsor guys. And believe it or not, even some of those guys sponsor guys. And the 12 steps have offered me a life not beyond my wildest dreams. Um, I could not have, I could not have manufactured and manifested a life as wonderful as the one I live today. I'm so glad Everly gave me a topic because when they asked me to come up with a topic, uh, I usually say something along the lines of, I'm going to talk about God. And that's as far as I get. Um, and I'm not shy about the topic of God. Um, and if that bothers you or rubs you the wrong way, when I get to the fourth step, I'll tell you where to put my name. And the topic that I was given was tortured loneliness versus spiritual forgiveness and gratitude. And as it led up to the meeting this evening, of course, right, the ego starts saying, well, what are you going to talk about? What stories are you gonna bring into that topic? Where are you gonna go in that direction? Right? And all of a sudden, the guy who tries to come to the podium and be inspired is trying to micromanage his own experience. And luckily for me, I have uh, enough discipline in this program and enough of a connection to God that I can be aware enough that that's just a voice in my head that loves uh, to manufacture nonsense, to send me chasing it down the road like a dog after the postal truck. And I mean, this one, I think that if there's any common burden, affliction, um, that we've all felt at some point or another before we got here, in the process of being here, and well after we've been here, is some measure of tortured loneliness. I know that it didn't make sense, or it wasn't crystal clear to me how lonely I really was until I really get surrendered to this deal and started to look at myself through the lens of the steps. But I know that, like, from early on, uh, loneliness was just a huge part of who I was. And I've heard, we've all heard the people share at the meetings and the people from the podium talk about, I could be alone in a room full of 100 people. And I think that that's absolutely true, because so often what keeps me sick, what keeps me disconnected, is my mind's ability to tell me a story that I'm disconnected. And my willingness at times, without the tools, to subscribe to the narrative that my mind uh, feeds me. And so much of my story is me heading down the wrong path, trying to figure out what it means to be a man. Um, right. And like the bullet points. 6 years old, crackhead father, murdered a few blocks from my home. My mom had to pick up two jobs, so she was hardly ever home. She had to pick up a second job, so she was hardly ever home. I was left in the charge of my older sister. Right, everybody always wants to know where the nine women came from. I don't have nine sisters. My mom owned a multi-apartment house, and we kind of just meshed in there. And so my older sister was in charge of me in my apartment, and then the next apartment was my aunt and her four daughters. And then downstairs was another aunt and her living female caretaker who was part of the family. And so it was me and this coven of human beings, um, where I didn't fit in. There was nobody to relate to. There was nobody to connect with on the level that I felt I needed connection. And and I did things that women did, right? Like I don't know how many Broadway plays that I know the entire soundtrack to. I could sing show tunes for my life, right? Like I used to come out of the shower and tie my towel up to here. I used to walk up the stairs on the tips of my toes. I used to, uh, if I didn't want to eat something, I would lie and I say I had cramps because I always heard my sister using her cramps to get herself out of just about anything. And that was to laughs and they're funny stories now, but at the time it was like I just didn't know which way was up. I was also a really bad asthmatic as a kid, so it made it hard for me to participate in sports and do boy things. I didn't relate well to other boys in school, which would translate to me not relating well to men in high school, to boys in high school, and being able to like really connect on a deep level with other masculine figures. I chased any kind of alpha male who seemed like he had life together, and if he was tough and he knew how to pick up girls and he could fight and all of these other things, and that got me in the street in the gang. And I didn't belong there either because I was in a gang in the street selling guns and drugs and nearly getting myself killed or locked up. But I was also a straight A honor student and I was a member of the chess club. So everywhere I was this walking contradiction. I didn't fit in anywhere. And it always felt social interactions felt like work. Talking to females felt like work. Uh, Being vulnerable felt like work. And then like booze and drugs make all of that go away, right? Booze and drugs, uh, they initiate a spiritual experience, right? And the first spiritual experience I had um, with alcohol was at my mom's wedding. Just before I turned 13, my mom got remarried to a guy nobody liked but her. Um, and we were from Puerto Rico, but hadn't been there for the first time until a few years before that. My Spanish wasn't very good back then. It's not the best it is now, but it's better. Um, and like 70% of the people at the wedding were his family who I didn't know. And here I am at this wedding where uh, people are speaking a language I don't speak. They're singing. There's a live salsa band. We didn't listen to a ton of salsa growing up. Um, we listen to like Motown and classic rock and that kind of stuff. And this guy was taking my mom away from me. And my stepbrother found me in the bathroom, pacing with anxiety, hiding. And he brought me a rum and coke, and he said, "Hey, man, I think this will fix you." And it did. I was speaking my broken Spanish to whoever would listen. I was dancing salsa with my hips going who knows where because I didn't dance it, and I was hugging on the guy who 5 minutes ago I hated, and I learned very quickly what alcohol could do for me. I hadn't the slightest idea what 12, 13 years later alcohol and drugs would do to me. And I would spend my life chasing something. I think that like you find yourself here, you find yourself in any kind of 12-step program, you find yourself in a church basement hanging out with strangers, drinking mediocre coffee. I think that if you manufacture the willingness to go to treatment, outpatient, halfway house, all of these things, you're seeking something. And I think what's on the other side of that seeking, whether we like to admit it or not, is that I'm looking uh, for okay to be right now to be okay. Because no matter what was going on, I was either stuck in the past or obsessed with the future, and I was never okay with me. And I always, I remember trying to intellectualize this program in my second trip of treatment. I tried to intellectualize everything. I devoured the big book and wanted to poke holes in it, and I wanted to be smarter than you. I wanted to be Fred, right, who thought he was making too big a deal out of something that wasn't. And and I remember spitting back all of this rhetoric to one of the counselors. And she's saying this has so little to do with your drinking and your drugging. And I said, what does it have to do with that? She says it has to do with your relationships with other people, with God, and with yourself, and how you're going to heal that. And for 1 second, for a moment, it was clear to me that like what was going to heal this was some level of love. That I was going to need to come to a place where I could forgive the people who the narrative told me were harming me, that I needed to forgive myself. And what came out of my mouth in that treatment center was, yeah, but I've hurt so many people. And I started crying like uncontrollable snot running ugly cry. And Marsha, who's like a 4'11" little Cuban counselor, she jumps up out of her seat and she starts clapping. And she says, for a moment, you see it, right? It's gone from your big old stupid head to your heart. And I drank again. And I got high again. And I did all of those things because I was without defense against that. The emotions that I experience, life is too uncomfortable. I have manufactured a life that is so unbearable. Whether it is actually unbearable or my mind just tells me it's unbearable, I have manufactured a life that is so unbearable that getting high and getting drunk seems to be the only solution that's going to offer me some relief from that. And I don't know what's wrong with me. And I'm trying to be honest with you guys, and I don't know how because I've had to lie my whole life to get out of trouble, to fit in, to measure up. Like I was the dishonesty was so deeply sewn into the fabric of who I was. I didn't even know how to tell the truth. And so I would come to meetings after having gotten high for months and raise my hand and say, I haven't had a drink in 2 months, thinking that I was being honest. Right. And something happens when I hang out with you guys too much. It gets harder to lie. It gets harder to cling to this false version of me, this self, this third party that lives in my mind that I think I am and that I identify with, and all of these negative things about me, and all of these deeply troubling stories that run through my mind. Um, and I start to understand that it is safe. And not only is it safe, man, did you guys provide the safest place for me to just be me. Every time I came back and said I got 3, 4, 5 days, you guys clapped. I'd knock on my sponsor's door after he painstakingly took me through the first, one time it was to 4 and 5, one time it was to 7. And I'd knock on his door and I'd say I did it again. And he'd give me the biggest hug and he'd say, okay, Papi, we missed something. We'll start again. When I was in the middle of that last run and I couldn't for the life of me spend 24 hours without getting drunk or high, he would call me about twice a week. And he would tell me the same thing every time. He said, hey, if you want to come over for breakfast, I got the good bacon. I went to the butcher. And there is a love that is offered here that I don't know exists anywhere else. I have not been in any community, in any circle, were complete and total strangers just because they understand the pain that you've been through, just because they understand the depths of despair and sadness that you've experienced, just because they understand how incredibly lonely your life is. They gang up on you with a love that can be oftentimes obnoxious, but is incredibly healing. And they just won't let you slip away. And I am a product of that love sitting here in front of you right now. And I needed to get to a place where I can offer that love. I needed to get to a place where I wasn't just taking. So much of my life had been so transactional. I show up with expectations of what you can offer me, and I'm only going to offer enough to extract from you what I need. And can I get to a place where I'm just giving love freely, expecting nothing in return? Right? I didn't even know what that looked like. Right? I remember my sponsor asking me, like, you ever hold the door for somebody? And I said, yeah, I hold the door for people all the time. He says, what do you do if they don't say thank you? I said, well, I shout, you're welcome. He says, well, then you're making that about you. Right. And that's a micro example, but that's how I live my life. I'm holding the door because I want a little attaboy. Right. I want somebody walking by to see that I am an altruistic being, as close as it's going to get to a saint walking the earth, just holding doors for complete strangers. And so I had to get busy on some step work. Right. And the big book doesn't talk about, doesn't mince words about the urgency behind my steps. Right. It spends a great deal of time talking about what my step one experience should look like and giving me a million examples and cues and questions and all of these things to ask me, like, what am I? Do I belong here? Right. And the truth of the matter is when I pick up, can I control the amount I take? And when I put it down, do I find myself picking up again? It's really that simple. And if that's the problem that I have, then I suffer from something that only a spiritual solution can conquer. Imagine going to a doctor and sitting there and saying, this is what I suffer from. And the doctor saying to you, the only hope you can possibly have is God. Well, guess what? There's a doctor in the beginning of the book, and that's exactly what he says. And there's two more doctors, if you keep reading through the book, that say the same exact thing, that the only thing that's going to fix me is if I have this collision with God that transforms me from the inside out. Well, how the hell do I get to that? I think I'm broken. I think I'm damaged goods. I think that I'm not enough. I think that I'm unlovable. I think that I've hurt too many people to ever be forgiven. I think that I've done too many terrible things to ever forgive myself. I think that I don't deserve to be loved by a God who's abandoned me in the times when I've needed him most. How do I get to the other side of that? That's got nothing to do with drinking or drugs. Well, I am an alcoholic. I am a drug addict. I'm an addict in every sense of the word. I have four coffee machines, right? Like, I play pickleball for 3 hours a day. I picked up the sport a year ago. My girlfriend's like, again, again. She's not one of us. She doesn't give. But if I have those two things, right? When I pick up, I can't control the amount I take. And when I put it down, my obsessive mind paints me a narrative that I'm going to be able to handle myself like a gentleman. So I follow that narrative to the depths of hell. Like that's one part of my step one experience. The truth is that because of my life lived with this relationship to this thing, my entire existence has become unmanageable with or without booze or drugs. My relationships, my emotions, the way that I approach work, the way that I approach life, the way that I approach me, all of those things have been brought into a level of disconnection when I'm getting high, and they just become more apparent and harder to deal with when I'm not getting high, right? And the thing is that if I think that drinking and getting high is my problem, then just stop is the solution. But if I just stop, I find that my life gets increasingly worth, right? Like I get some color in my skin and $5 in my pocket, and I might be able to make an appointment on time, but my emotional nature goes out of whack, and I can't relate to you, and I can't relate to me because the only thing I had to pour on these emotions is now gone. And here's the thing. Step one doesn't mean I can't drink or get high. Step one means I'm going to drink and I'm going to get high. If I can't get an experience with God between me and that next one, and I can't get an experience with God if I'm not willing to keep going, right? The truth about me must make me willing to recognize that everything I've tried to fix this has failed. I tried to read every spiritual book under the sun. I tried to do yoga. I tried to work out. I tried to, whew, and none of it works. I went to the church. I was raised in the church. I was raised in Catholic school. I went to Catholic school all the way from first grade through college. My mom was the lector. She used to read the readings on Sundays. I had a profound experience at 18 years old where I walked in the church and I gave my life to Jesus Christ and I had a relationship with God. And on some level, like I was seeking that again, the same way the addict seeks that first high. And I was stuck because I was chasing both of those things at the same time. So when you guys told me that I had to get a relationship with God, I thought I'd cut out the middleman and just go straight to the church because that's where I found God before. And I would answer an altar call and I would get anointed with oil on my head to pray for my alcoholism. And then I'd leave church and I'd go to the bar. I don't have the power. It's so much deeper than I have an obsession. I don't have the power. I'm an unlit lamp. And if I am to find some power, I have to recognize that there is a power bigger than me that exists. And for somebody with an ego as big as mine, that can be really, really hard. So I start with addition by subtraction. I remove me. And I say that every time I come back to this place, I've 3 days, 4 days, 5 days back. It's the same people doing the same things, saying that this is the solution to the problem. So maybe they're onto something. Right. And the thing is, I can be in solitude. I can be alone and be okay. The most tortured loneliness I've ever experienced in the history of my life is when I cannot feel the presence of God in my life. That's the darkest place for me. And so I have to enter into contract with God and say, I'm going to make this agreement with you, meaning that I'm going to stop trying to do your job because I'm terrible at it, which means that like I'm going to stop deciding that I know what's best for me, for you. I'm going to stop writing the script for everybody in my life. I'm going to stop assigning myself a role in your life. I'm going to stop changing who I am and my personality to fit this trend, the transactional nature of my approach to you. And I'm going to trust God to care and protect me. I'm going to trust God to provide my resources. I'm going to trust God to look after me. I'm going to go out and to the best of my ability, be an agent for God, which sounds really corny, but it's true. And I got to learn some things about me. Why am I so angry? Book calls it resentment. I feel things over and over and over again. And why do I feel them over and over and over again? Because I attach a story to them about me. Anybody ever cut you off in traffic and you really were convinced that they woke up that morning to ruin your day? Right? You ever sitting over lunch, like eating your noodles, like thinking, I'm gonna be back at that intersection at 7:37 tomorrow and I'm gonna murder this mother. Right? Like that's what I do. And it gets deeper than that, right? Like I had a resentment against my dad who got murdered. Oh, why couldn't he get his life together for his kids? Hey, bro, like you were in his shoes. Sometimes The only way that I come to the truth and the realization of why I'm angry is if I take a walk through the shoes of those people. Anything that I've ever been angry about, for anything I've ever been angry about at someone for doing, I find that I did to them or somebody else in my life every time I write a resentment inventory. And sometimes the resentments, I don't play a role in it. I don't have a role in my father's addiction and him not being able to show up for us and him getting killed because he couldn't get out of the street life. But if I'm here at 32, again at 35, again at 37, writing inventory and it's still coming up, then I'm spending the rest of my life making myself a victim of it. And that's what I'm doing. And guess what? Victims do not recover. Nobody owes you anything. And I'm scared. I'm terrified because I've spent my life trying to manufacture a life where I can predict and control outcomes, and I can't do that. And because I can't do that, my mind tells me that I'm not enough. Anybody ever get the feeling that they're not enough? You're not. I'm not. And there's a beautiful peace in not being enough. And it's not about self pity or feeling less than. It's not, I don't have the power to change the way my life is going. But if I come here and I do this thing, I have an opportunity to gain access to a power that can transform my life in a way that I never thought possible. All of those things are just thoughts. They're just thoughts. They're just like the voice in my mind that has been conditioned by this terrible past that I lived, whether it was put on me or I created it myself. It doesn't really matter. And the thing is that I arrive at every relationship I've ever been in with those being the only tools I got. I got the story I tell myself and the story I'm trying to control. I'm angry and I'm scared and I hurt you because I don't know how not to. Hey, man. Hey, Bill, I got some inventory. You want to read that with me? All right. Hey, Chris, I got some inventory. Can I read this to you? And I trust that God has put these people in my life to point out the patterns that I can't see. And when I do, when I'm done with my fifth step, when somebody sits there and I know that God's working in the fifth step, we don't talk about it enough because I've listened to fifth steps. And when you listen to fifth steps, all of a sudden you become this marionette for God and he starts moving your mouth and things start coming out that don't make any sense. I'm not that wise. I'm not that spiritually connected. I'm not that profound, but I can see things that I wouldn't be able to see if I didn't walk in the door and say, hey, God, help me to guide this man. And I trust that God sent somebody who said the same prayer before they sat down with me. And you know something? The kid who grew up with all the women in the house, who didn't know how to connect with men, who lied and embellished stories, who was always trying to measure up, who was completely and totally full of shit, sits across with another man. And I bear my heart and I bear my soul. And all of a sudden we are connected. I can look him in the eye. All of a sudden my chin's up. I did the best that I could with the tools that I was given from people who were doing the best they could with the tools that they were given. And I made a ton of mistakes, but those aren't who I am. We're trying to get to who I am. That's the story. That's the self. That's this third party that has hijacked my life. And I got to get behind that to find the man that God created. And I got to be willing to have God uproot that because I don't have the power to uproot that myself. I'm not that good. I couldn't uproot the addiction. I'm not going to be able to uproot the resentment or the fear or the selfishness or the dishonesty or any of it. Those are my tools. At some point in my life, they served me. They were survival skills. They helped me get to where I needed to be, but now they're obsolete. I am now on the plane of working for what God needs me to be, and God doesn't need me to be dishonest. God doesn't need me to be manipulative. God doesn't need me to be scared. Remember, I said in step three that I trusted him. So what am I doing now? Holding on to fear. What am I doing now? Holding on to resentment. Where am I going if God's direction is that way and I'm holding on to these? They're just weighing me down. Drop the rocks. And I start to forgive me. My friend Donna said one of the most beautiful things ever. I wrote in an inventory and I wrote this long resentment against myself. I was so angry at me. And I was so angry at me because I was still making really stupid mistakes years into sobriety. She said, man, it's not about being resentful at you. She said, it's about where you're not letting God in. And you can't be angry at yourself for the places in your life where you don't know God. And it blew it open for me. It's right. The ultimate errand is less Matt, more God. Where can I bring God into my relationship? Where can I bring God into my parenting? Where can I bring God into my firehouse? Where can I bring God into my community? Like, where can I bring God everywhere? You guys always make me cry. And if I'm willing to forgive me, which is harder to me, right? I have kind of come to a place today in my recovery where I can really see like this true blanket thing. Like we're all God's kids just trying to have an experience. And I can forgive, I can see the humanity in other people and I can forgive. And it's really hard to forgive me. Right. And I don't know if I'm alone in this, but like sometimes the ego tries to tell me this story about like, yo, dude, like you're really sober. Like you do this deal. You pray, you meditate, you write inventory, you speak at meetings, you speak at conferences. Like you're so sober. You ain't got to look at that. You don't need to think about that. You don't need to work on that. And the thing is that if I listen to that voice, I will spiral backwards and I will unravel because, right, they think that us big book thumpers are like 12-step elitists and that we think that we're better than. And I could tell you that that's right. Like at some point or another, it's gonna make you a zealot. You keep going, it humbles you back down. But I'll tell you something. What I have learned in my trips through the big book, and there have been plenty. My home group is a big book study that meets 7 days a week. Is that if I don't stick to the black on the white that comes in the big book, I unravel pretty quickly. So it's easier to just stay there. Also, if I stick to the spiritually inspired text and just weave my experience around it, instead of trying to manufacture some sort of instruction to you, I'm less likely to let my ego get involved. While as me, I try to reinvent the wheel of the 12 steps. What's up, Tony? And so I start to make a list of people I'm willing to make direct amends to, which is not exciting. The idea that I'm supposed to go out and make, I'm supposed to do to the best of my ability, repair the damages that I've caused. This is really when that willingness to believe starts to bud into some faith and trust in God, because these could go wrong. But what I have done is I've asked God to take the things away from me that continue to harm and hurt people. And so I'm in a place now where I can see what I did. I'm patient enough to shut up and listen when I ask them, how can I repair this? And before I walk in, I forgive me and I forgive them. And I'll tell you that every single amends that I've made, where at some point or another I had a resentment against this person, when I tried to actively ask God to help me forgive them, I received an amends at the amends I was offering. I shouldn't need an amends, but damn, sometimes it feels good to not be as crazy as I thought. And all of a sudden, as I start like knocking down those dominoes of amends, the world doesn't seem like such a scary place anymore. I'm not looking over my shoulder. I'm not running from somebody I owe money to. I'm not ducking around the corner for involving myself in the wrong guys with the wrong guy's wife. I can walk through the world proud of who I am, proud of my efforts, I come home from all of that. I look in the mirror and you know what? You're all right, kid. And then I have to live this. Right? 4 through 9 rescue me from me. 10, 11, and 12 help me to grow in understanding and effectiveness. They keep me connected to God. They deepen my connection to God. They deepen my connection to you. 10, I watch. Right? I ask God to take him and he doesn't come in. He's not a genie. Like I don't finish with the 7-step prayer and all of a sudden like levitate through life. I'm still going to get scared. I'm still going to get resentful. I'm still going to be dishonest. I'm still going to be selfish, all of those things. And when they come up, I say, hey, man, like I asked for you to take this. Can you take it? Hey, man, I hurt you. How can I fix it? Hey, Tony, I messed up. I need to talk to you about it. And then I find somebody to help. Helping other people becomes the solution to my life. If selfishness is the core problem of my life, then selflessness is the core solution of my life. God doesn't need me to do anything. But if I'm asking him how I can be useful, the answer is usually to go out into the world and help one of his kids. At the end of the night, hey, God, how'd I do in watching and then following the directions? If there's something I got to talk to somebody about, was I thinking about myself all day today? God, I'm really sorry. I need forgiveness for the places that I fell short. There were some times that I tried to do your job again today, and I still suck at it. And then if I'm willing to live in that, I go to bed and I just leave it there. Right? Constructive, not constructive. Right? It's just a nightly inventory of how my day went. I just leave it there because I wake up in the morning and I say, hey God, like is there anything I need to do today to rectify how badly I did yesterday? God, consider my plans for the day. Hey God, where can I be of service? God, what's my assignment? What are the tools I'm gonna need? Throughout the day, I pause and I say, hey God, I don't know about this one. The apartment that I'm sitting in right now, we tried to get this apartment so that my stepdaughter could come live with us in July, in June. I came here, saw the apartment. The real estate agent that was helping us was terrible. So I told the landlord, I said, I'm not going to pay him a realtor's fee for not doing his job. He didn't even show up when he was supposed to show up to his apartment. It took him like days and days to get back to us. I was like, hey, man, like I want the apartment, but I'm dealing directly with you. I said, he said, sorry, man, we're in contract with them. My girlfriend loved the apartment. It's bigger than where we used to live. So it's like, all right, we ain't getting the apartment, whatever. So we just went about living our lives. And because I'm an alcoholic, I spent money. So then I wasn't, it was off the market on the website. It didn't look like it was going to happen. And then one day I'm perusing through Zillow and here comes the apartment again. And I called the landlord directly. I said, hey, man, I want this apartment still. And he says, cool, man. Like, we're not doing it through a realtor. That's our post. Come through, get the apartment. And I submit all the paperwork. And like 72 hours later, he's like, cool, get the apartment. I call my girlfriend. I said, guess what, babe? We got the apartment. She says, you serious? Do we have the money? I said, absolutely not. True story. So how am I gonna get the money? So I start manufacturing, right? My own little plans and designs about how I'm gonna get this money and all this stuff. And it's coming up to like 48 hours before I'm supposed to show up and move into this place and get the keys, and I still ain't got the money. And finally, I paused and I said, God, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I want to do, but I know that you didn't put me in a position to give a bigger place for my family and to deliver this thing that I've been trying to deliver. without having a way for me to do it. And so I just called up one of my clients. I'm a fireman by day, fitness, health and fitness coach by night. I called up one of my clients. I said, "Hey man, are you signing back up for next year?" He said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "Cool, I'm going to send you the link." I had a bank account where there was fraud on the card. And when they sent me the new card, I just let it sit there and I never touched it. It wasn't a ton of money in the account. And I just let it sit there. I never activated the new card. And something told me to check that account after the payment from that client had been deposited. And the money, these were not round numbers. The money in the account and the money from that single client payment were to the decimal, the exact amount of money that I needed to move into this apartment. I am not good enough to manufacture a story like that. We moved into the, I've been telling this because this was the one of the best moments ever. I'll tell you, I tortured my son. He's 16. I got three and an habichuela. That's what Tony knows what that is. I got a little habichuela brewing. And my son, I didn't get sober till he was 6 years old. And the beauty of that is that God inspired me to break the cycle because my dad died when I was 6 from this thing. Right. But he has memories of the craziness and the violence between me and his mom. And he's got some ugly things in his mind. And my daughter doesn't have any of that. Right. I've been telling this story at every meeting, every time. I picked her up from school right after we moved into this place. She says, "Daddy, where are we going?" She always needs to know the next move. She's calculated. She's 5. She's a maniac. She says, "Where are we going?" I said, "We're going home, baby." She said, "Yeah, home is my favorite place." That's it. That's it. Like that is cash and prizes right there. My ass couldn't fit through the door for 72 hours after hearing her tell me that home was her favorite place. And I get to come tell you guys a story about this. And the most powerful way that I get to tell somebody a story about this is one to one. Hey, man, I know how broken you feel. I know you didn't mean to get here. I know how much this thing hurts. I know how hard this thing is. But there's something magical, there's something powerful happening here. And you don't ever have to feel like that. And if you're a little bit patient, if you can be honest with you and at least with me, and if you're willing enough to try what we offer here, I promise you that there's freedom, like real freedom on the other side of this. And you don't have to, I don't do this thing perfectly. I fail and I fall often, but I don't have to be perfect. I have to try. My prayer meditation practice has morphed so many times over the years that sometimes a prayer is me banging my forehead on the ground and saying, "God, what the hell is going on?" And then it's practice these principles in all my affairs. Can I be just as patient with my mom who just turned 70 as I can be with the new guy who walked in the door? She Everly talked about me dancing with my mom. Why that was such a cool story. 2 years ago, I'm really busy, right? I work 3 jobs. I'm running around. Like one of my jobs is 24-hour shifts, right? And my mom knows how I'm busy. She worked all those jobs for all those years, and she just moved into a new place, and she's getting her knee replaced. And just before I went to treatment, my mom walked into my apartment when I was getting high and drunk. One time trying to cook and the house was a mess, and she looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "What happened to my son? What happened to my son?" And so she's getting her knee replaced. And she says, "Hey man," like she's leading up to it, and she's giving me all of these dates, and so I keep all of these dates, and I rearrange with all the guys from work, and I let my clients know I'm not going to be there and all this stuff, and I tell her none of that. And she's like, "Friday they got to take me in for surgery. You gonna be there?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm gonna be out about 3 p.m. Are you gonna be?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Saturday I'm gonna be alone in the hospital all day." I said, "Yeah, I'll be there with treats and snacks and food and the whole deal." She said, "Can you pick me up Sunday and take me home from the hospital?" I said, "I'll be there." And I took her home and I built her little ice machine that she wraps around her knee. And then I was back the next day. And the next, she's like, "Don't you have to go to work?" I said, "No, I took off 2 weeks. I'm gonna be here every day. You stuck with me, kid." And she got crazy. She started having me paint stuff and build stuff. And remember, she just moved into a new place. And I'm painting this cabinet for her. She hobbles over with her little walker as she's healing up, dragging this ice machine behind it. She kisses me on the top of my head like she did when I was 5. She says, "Kid, I don't know what I'd do without you." And then a year later, she got a new boyfriend, by the way, in this new apartment that she moved into. John from 4B slid a note under the door and said, "Hey, Debbie, can I take you out to dinner?" They've been dating for the last 3 years. Best story ever. He's a very nice guy. But he doesn't like to travel. So her best friend's kid is getting married in Puerto Rico and she needed a date. And it was short notice. She said, "You think you can make it happen?" And I moved mountains and I got on a plane and I bought a suit. Right. If you've ever seen me at a conference or at a wedding, it's the same suit. I got one suit. I'm a one suit guy. If you die or you get married, you can see me in the same outfit. And we went to Puerto Rico and we had a blast. And we danced all night long at this horse ranch where the wedding was under the stars and there were fireworks and she had a ball. And I got to do that with her. You know, life is just good and not perfect. Nobody is promising you sunshine and rainbows. My girlfriend and I have been together for almost 8 years, and it has not always been easy. My son's 16, he's not hers. Her daughter's 12 and she's not mine, but she's mine, and he's not hers, but he's hers kind of situation. And we all live in this Honda Rican Brady Bunch house. And life here is so damn good. Just before I got here to speak to you guys, I went over and kissed her on the forehead because she was sleeping. And my 5-year-old who fell asleep on the couch next to me, I just laid her in the bed with her. And then I got to come hang out with you guys. I get to do this. All of those things that at some point felt like I have to do this. I have to go to meetings. I have to make coffee. I have to write inventory. I have to call my sponsor. I have to pray. At some point or another, there's this shift that I get to. Right? My sponsor tells me all the time. He's like, "God's throwing a party, dude, just for you. Not like this universal party that everybody's invited to. Like, God's throwing a party just for you." Right? All of you dudes who are sitting in Bridge House, I want you to know that God is throwing a party just for you. The only way that I don't show up is if I get in my own way. Make use of what we have here. Right? Somebody's going to stand in front of you. They're going to offer you a spiritual toolkit. Pick it up. Do what's necessary. You don't want to miss what's available here. Thanks for letting me share.